All right, hello everyone. My name is Jake Dunlap. I'm going to be the moderator today. I'm the CEO of Skaled. We work with growth stage technology companies like many of the companies here, helping them to optimize their sales processes. So really excited for today and to be moderating the webinar. We have, as you can see, 3 amazing sales leaders here right now. We should have a 4th that's joining us in the next couple of minutes here. To get started, what I'd like to do is just some quick introductions, and then we'll dive into a deeper agenda. So, Mike, if you want to get us started.
Sure. Hi, my name is Mike Rosenberg. I'm the Senior Director of Sales over at Grovo. I've been selling into human resources for about 15 years, although I've been with Grovo about a couple months. Grovo is a learning platform with a robust micro-learning library on a breadth of different topics.
Got it. I guess I'll go next, Jake. Perfect. So I'm Tice Pell, and I'm at Rocketrip. Rocketrip is a new technology sort of set out to help companies save money on travel expenses by rewarding employees for saving money. So I've been at Rocketrip for about a month. So I'm new to this game, but sort of stepping into hyper-growth, really exciting a product that I can really get behind. I was at Trulia for 8 years and at Salesforce.com a couple of years before that. And, looking forward to chatting today and sort of hearing what some of the other panelists have to say as well.
Marc?
You're up.
All right. My name is Marc Jacobs, and I am the VP of Sales at Greenhouse. I've been at Greenhouse for about 13 months now. Greenhouse is a solution that helps companies make better hires, and the way that we do that is we optimize their recruiting, interviewing, and hiring processes. And we have just passed 1,000 customers. Company has grown from 40 people at the beginning of this year to close to 200 right now. So having a lot of fun, and the company is doing great. So looking forward to sharing some best practices of what we've done here, as well as prior to coming here, I've been in sales leadership positions at VMware, VirtuStream, company called Cross Border Solutions, and Thomson Reuters over the last 15 years.
All right, Robby, welcome. You're up.
Thanks. Cool. Hey, guys. My name is Robby Allen. I'm Director of Sales Development, specifically outbound sales development over at Zenefits. I started with the company 2 years ago in San Francisco. I moved out to Scottsdale to expand our operations here in Arizona. I guess for those of you who don't know, Zenefits is online HR software platform covering kind of all facets of the entry of employees into their company, onboarding, HR, benefits, and all that. I'm really excited to be here, excited to talk to you guys, so thank you for having me.
All right. Awesome, guys. So just a quick reminder, we're doing a special giveaway with Sales Hacker during the webinar. We're going to be giving away 2 SaaStr annual conference tickets. So to win, please tweet at ScaledCom using hashtag SaaStr Annual, SAASTR Annual, to be entered. So I'll announce the winners at the end of the hour. So for the agenda today, again, we're going to be talking about the 6 things your sales organizations needs to prepare for here in 2016. And I want to break it up into really 2 main areas of focus. First, around the people and the team. So how we're finding people, how we're bringing those people on board, whether you're new to the role or whether you're scaling from 0 to 40. And then we'll talk about the process. What are some of the changes that we're seeing in buyer behavior? What are some of the changes that we're seeing in terms of how we're thinking about growing our top of funnel? What are some of the changes we're seeing about the actual sales process, and what preferences are changing? So to start it off, let's start on the team side here. And Tice, I'll start with you. So as a new VP of sales, coming into the organization, and Mike, you're in this boat, maybe where Tice was, Tice's organization a year ago. What excites you about building out a new team? And, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing, as you think about the new year when you're building out a team from, 0 to 10 really in, the course of a month?
Yeah, so obviously there are a lot of challenges that come along with growing the team, but I'll talk a little bit about what's exciting, I think, about building a team from the ground up. I think, from the challenges standpoint, obviously I'm sort of stepping into an organization that has been run a certain way. So I need to sort of really understand and determine what's the perfect client profile. Things like that seem really simple, but I think it's really important to dial that in and know what that is. Because as I start hiring SDRs and hiring AEs, we want to make sure that we're spinning our wheels in the right direction, I guess. And then obviously, with that, learning and perfecting the sales process. So once we know who to go after, what does that process look like? What kind of sales marketing tools are involved? And then obviously, with using Salesforce.com and other technologies that I know we'll talk about as a group sort of later in the call. But just really figuring out all those pieces and making sure that I'm putting all the puzzle pieces together in such a way that everybody can be as efficient as possible. Along with that comes some housekeeping and just housekeeping on all fronts, but really figuring out, okay, the 2 salespeople and the CEO that have been doing all the sales to date, what kind of data do we have? What do we have in Salesforce? What can we learn from it? Why aren't there any states with any of our leads? Why don't we have direct phone numbers for most of our leads? Simple things like that will be housekeeping, right? It's going to take some time to sort of get to the bottom of that stuff. And then my number one biggest challenge, and maybe Marc, you and I should talk about it, is hiring. And as somebody coming into a 2-person show that we're looking to grow to at least 10 or 12 by the end of January, hiring is obviously a big challenge. And I think we'll talk a little bit about the hiring process as we go through this. But the exciting things are, I think, I happen to have the opportunity to sell a product that I really believe in as a road warrior for a lot of years. I really believe in it. And then I think my number one exciting thing is just that I get to create and define the sales culture with who I hire, how I set goals. And I think coming from, my past experience, I think culture is paramount. It really matters. And, there are all sorts of studies about happy employees and how much more productive they are, how much better they work as a team, and they collaborate, and they are motivated. And when their buddy's doing, 10 calls in a day, they want to make sure they're doing 10 calls in a day. So just keeping everybody motivated. And I think there's at the root of it, there's sort of a team aspect there where, yes, there's some competitive juices flowing, but at the same time, everybody's really working as a team and trying to sort of achieve those goals. So that's what's so exciting for me.
All right, Mike, what about you? So you inherited a team of 60, right? As really the first head of sales. So what are the things that you're thinking about now that you're a whopping 5 weeks into the role and looking into Q1 and Q2, particularly around again just the development of the team? Tice talked about culture and people. So I think it'd be good to get, kind of your insights as well, too, being brand new into, an organization that, for its size is probably more mature without having a sales leader. So I'd love to get your take on it, too.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's definitely the largest team that I've inherited. The company, 2 companies ago, I was at iSIMS and applicant tracking, and I was kind of there from the beginning almost, from when we started hiring everybody. And then from there, I moved on to Square, large organization, but I started up the New York office from scratch. This is very different where, yeah, there are 60 people here, 20 people on the customer sales side. So the culture is pretty much ingrained here, which is great. The values are already set. And because we grew so fast, almost the same story as Marc, from 40 to 200 in less than 2 years, everyone was getting used to advancing so quickly. And so now that I'm coming in and I'm taking over for the CEO and the founder as the head of sales, instituting some processes, it's just setting expectations for everybody of, I understand that's how it was because we were growing as fast as we were. And while financially, in terms of revenue, we're growing even faster, the number of opportunities are going to slow down a little bit, and we're going to have to start instituting more processes and give everybody just a heads up of what it's going to look like to move from one position to another. So that's what I'm excited about, but it's also probably one of the challenges of setting, here are all the different levels of positions that we can get into, here's what's expected within each role, here's what you need to accomplish within each role before you move to the next. because some people were in a position for 3 months and it was like, hey, great job, here's your next promotion. And then we have to set it where, well, maybe it's more like 6 to 12 months before you move on to the next. But Q1 and Q2, we've already set what the org chart is going to look like. We've hired about 12 people since I've already been here. We have 6 more offers out of people that are hopefully starting Jan 1. So huge growth that will slow down from then on. And so from now on, it's just all professionalization and now just going through a lot of value selling and sales techniques, but really exciting stuff going into 2016.
All right, great. Yeah, and I think it's got to be a unique challenge too with, slowing down something that's just been going so fast to kind of right size and make sure that you have the house in order. So, I think that's a good segue actually maybe to you, Marc, which is, when you're going through those big, hiring clips, I think really 2 things. First, how are you finding these people, right? When you think about where these top A players live and, maybe even how that's changed or how you see it evolving. And then, the interviewing, hiring, and onboarding process, I think it'd be great to get your perspective because you just went through this in 2015. Talk a little bit about the experience and then how you, maybe see that even evolving further as we look forward into next year.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as two phases. One is the phase where you need to make sure that you're attracting the right folks, and then once you attract the right folks in, making sure that they're actually the right folks. So when I look at it, I look at the first thing that I would want to accomplish is, in order to attract the right people, is to provide an environment for success and be able to show that you're able to provide that environment. And what goes into that. I mean, different things for different places, but for me, the things that are most important in terms of the environment for success is having obviously a great product that solves a real problem. Pretty obvious. I think having a really good built-out onboarding and training process. Tice had mentioned, and I know Michael just talked about, plans for career growth. I think putting some career ladders and career growth into place and developing a plan where these A players that you're looking for can make a lot of money, and having a great culture. Those are the ways that you can attract people. But really what I think is the most important is making sure that those people are the right people once you get them in the door. I mean, think about it. Historically, we hired salespeople based on how much we liked them and how well they did their last job, but I would make the argument that that's probably not right. Salespeople all should be able to fake how good they are and tell us exactly what we want to hear. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in sales. I mean, I'm not saying that that's the strength of a salesperson, but it is. They should be able to at least go into an interview and tell us how great they are. I mean, everybody we talked to, they were all top performers at their last company. So we need to be able to get under the covers a lot more to make sure that they're going to be successful at our organization, not only successful where they were, and we need to figure out the characteristics and traits that are going to that we look for in an ideal candidate, so we can make sure that we evaluate on all the things that we believe are important for success. Of course, we can constantly iterate on those things based on what we learn from who is currently successful or not successful on our team. But in order to get around the fluff that the sales candidates throw at us, we need to have a real structured interview in place. We need to be able to test them on their skills and ask real behavioral questions. So for me, if I'm hiring an SDR, I want to see how they sound on a cold call. If I'm hiring an account executive, I want to see how they sell and how they take feedback from a coaching perspective. And for my managers, I want to see how they coach. So it's not just about how they did before, and it's really figuring out what makes people successful in your organization, and then finding the right people and then testing to make sure that they will be successful in your organization.
Yeah, and I think actually, I mean, Robby, you can talk a little bit about this in particular. Let's stay on this kind of interview theme here, which is again, I think all sales leaders go through this in this rapid growth where you need people, and everyone says hire slow, fire fast, but we have outside board pressures and other things that say, hey, we need people. And so Robby, as you guys were scaling last year and then this year, maybe you can talk about the vetting process. Talk about the interviewing process and what you did. From some of the things Marc is bringing up around making sure that you are bringing the right people in and not just bodies, which I know sometimes there's the pressure to hire.
Yeah, definitely. And I think my perspective is a little bit different than all three of the other panelists here, where my focus is specifically on hiring SDRs. So we couldn't really hire fast enough in the San Francisco market for a lot of reasons, and I think you guys can relate to being in big metro areas, like just how competitive it really is. So we packed up and headed out to the desert and found it was a lot easier to grow and scale out there. A year into us opening the office, we had hired about 250, just specifically SDR reps. There's a similar number for our account executive team as well out here. And to be honest with you, I think that when you experience growth like that, your hiring process needs to change. And we kind of were doing constant reevaluation of how we're hiring people and what's working and what's not. And I can really relate to what Marc just said about you hire people initially, and salespeople, of course, are good at selling themselves in the interview and what they've done in the past. But it's important to put kind of checks and balances and measures in place, like early in the onboarding process, to make sure that the people you're trying to hire are kind of aligning with, what the result and bottom line looks like for the business. For us, I think a lot of it was getting a little bit creative and pushing the boundary on where we can find entry-level salespeople. And we partnered with a lot of local universities. So we work with ASU and U of A here in Arizona very closely. And we go to the business schools over there and introduce ourselves. There wasn't as much of a presence of local SDR programs here. So it was much more looking for those industries and those jobs where you find people who have the hustle, they've got the knack, they've got the will, and they want to start a career. And we had to look all over the place. But I think we found a pretty steady pipeline coming in from universities. And then as far as the hiring process goes, I think what we've landed on is really seeking to simulate as much of the actual job as we possibly can during the hiring process, but not dragging it out over 5 or 6 phone calls and email tests, trying to be as efficient as we possibly can. And it's worked for us, but it's taken a lot of iteration to get there. And I'm excited about talking a little bit more about the onboarding process as well, because we put the measures in place in the first 30 and 60 days to kind of make sure that not only are we hiring the right people, but they're growing at the rate that they need to grow.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, Robby. And I think the big takeaway there is, and I think Marc, you talked about this too, is you want to try to simulate the job as much as possible, right? As without to your point, dragging it on. So now that we have people, so we found the people that we want to hire, and hopefully we've weeded out those individuals. Now we're hiring, onboarding, and then keeping people engaged. And I think those are some of the more difficult pieces, particularly as your company is growing and scaling, is making sure you have an amazing onboarding process so people are set up for success. And then Mike, some of the things you talked about, which is kind of career pathing and how you keep people engaged. So I want to tackle these 2 topics, onboarding and kind of continual engagement. So Mike, you talked a little bit about this kind of career pathing. So maybe you can talk a little bit about, kind of keeping people engaged, and what are some of the things that you found to be successful. And I think the big piece is, do you see that changing, or, how have you seen the needs of the workforce change over the last, year or 2 years?
Definitely not anything new in the fact that individuals just want advancement. Every interview that I think I've done in the past 12 months, everyone asks, this position sounds great, but what would I be doing next? So they don't have the job yet, but they definitely want to know, hey, what am I going to be doing after I'm really successful here? So I love the confidence, but that just keeps up the challenge with how you're going to keep them engaged. So, currently here at Grovo, we have just 2 teams. And already come next year, we're looking to create 3 teams from the closing side. And then on the SDR side, we're actually looking to create 3 teams out of that. So the goal is we'll hopefully be able to hire individuals pretty junior, maybe with 12 months or less experience, possibly just new grads, and then having them grow up within the organization. Just like Marc was saying, good salespeople are going to be able to fool us in as many demos as we want them to take us through during the interview process. We can all point to stories of where we had an amazing interview and what really went wrong. So I would much rather trust someone who I know that has grown within the organization, and although has not used the skills that I want them to possess in the next role, I would wholeheartedly trust them based on their work ethic and what they've done in a previous role to take on the next one. So my goal would be to create an organization here where I never have to hire from the outside again, outside of the SDR role. And that way, when I have enterprise openings, when I have management openings, we can groom them all from within. it just builds camaraderie. It builds out the team. Everybody just really loves it. There's no negative points that go around it. So this is what I'm doing currently. We're expanding the enterprise team, we're expanding management, and we're doing interviews with a ton of people, some who are ready and some who realize they're not, but appreciate the fact that they can raise their hand. So people are staying very motivated and very engaged, even if they don't receive these opportunities, the ones that they know are going to exist 3, 6, and 12 months down the line. And that's what's pretty exciting about this, and I think everybody's really rallying around it.
Tice, I think you're on mute.
Oh, sorry about that. So I was just saying that, yes, I think that career development, career growth is absolutely a motivating factor to get people to stay engaged and stick around. But what I was sort of bringing up is that I think that fair and achievable goals are something else that we as sales leadership need to focus on. When I played sports in college, if my coach told me that I had to do all the workouts I could possibly do to run a 5-minute mile, I would have looked at her like she had 6 heads, and I wouldn't have done any of the workouts because there's no way I was going to be able to run a 5-minute mile. Ultimately, they gave us each individual goals that we could hit, but I just think that that's sort of when people can build their goals, it adds to, or sorry, when they can reach their goals and achieve them, I think that sort of builds that sense of team and helps with the sense of culture and goes from there. Sorry about the mute.
That's okay. I think I was on mute when I asked the question. So, and then Robby, maybe let's shift and we'll wrap up some of the team questions here. And so let's make sure we have, if other people want to chime in. When we talk about now, we've set these goals, we've made sure they're realistic and achievable. We've understood, where these people want to grow and advance. And then we think about, let's call it even onboarding and then also the continual development. So Robby, how have you guys at, Zenefits, where you guys have grown just so rapidly and obviously when you grow rapidly, there's kind of a natural career progression where, hey, you want to promote from within. So how have you guys thought about, the onboarding and continual development part and really kind of training as a part of the organization?
Yeah, absolutely. And Mike, I wanted to highlight, I thought it was really cool that you said you guys, in an ideal world, would just hire SDRs and promote from within. I think that was a really cool idea and something that we kind of strive for too here. As far as continual development, it's funny. I started as a rep at Zenefits, and we were, at the time we were smaller. We're hiring people who knew what they were doing and probably didn't need a ton of training to do it. So with me, it was like a laptop, pat on the back, like good luck and get out there kind of thing. And so we've had to grow out of that, right? Like over time. And moving out here to Scottsdale, it's been interesting. In talking in interviews, I think like this generation, especially of like younger salespeople looking to start a career, are really interested in knowing, like, beyond just the onboarding program, like what type of sales training and growth am I going to get to experience at your company? And how do you guys plan on deploying that? And sort of like, what does my growth look like? And I think that goes in conjunction with, the role beyond the role, right? Like, what are you going to teach me in this role that's going to set me up for the role after that? And it's been great because it's really forced us to take a look at not just the onboarding program, which, we went from, like I mentioned, just one-day program to now we've got a really robust 30-day program with a dedicated sales training team. Some of the people on the team have been reps and they have that experience. Some are expertise from other companies. And now we're looking, we've got this 30-day program established where people basically get a certificate to kind of move out on the sales floor and have a quota, essentially. And now we're looking a lot more at, months 3 through 9 and even beyond that. What do our reps need to learn and how can we keep them engaged and sort of like push forward these conversations we're having on the phone through our training? Make it less of like a requirement and a hurdle and more so make it in conjunction with like the direction that we want our reps to go. And we've gotten some really great feedback about it, but I do think it's something that savvy salespeople out there are starting to think about is what kind of training am I going to get at your company and how are you guys going to sort of like provide that for us?
Yeah, I'll jump into that because I appreciate, Robby, what you're talking about learning. Obviously, it's near and dear to my heart over at Grovo, and we have, I'm not going to call it an advantage, but we obviously want to use our own wares in terms of training and the learning piece of it. And it's the culture that I inherited, so it's nothing that I put into place. I cannot take credit, but we thrive on the training, the learning aspects of it, and we're obviously seeing it with individuals that have 0 to 5 years of experience. So every Monday, one of the top performers of every team is called on to go through a training of their own. A lot of sports analogies on Monday morning, but in addition, just life lessons, books they've read, things they've used within to make them successful, and it's pieces that everyone can use. And some of it is existential, and other pieces are very, very specific in what people can do. And I've seen them crave that, definitely more than, not to date myself, but my generation, in terms of from a learning or a training aspect. So we definitely are trying to revolve a lot of our curriculum around that. It is where the micro-learning comes into play, but honestly, as long as we keep it on a steady diet of training and learning of things that are real and true and can be used, we found only positive aspects from that and positive outcomes.
All right, great. So the theme that I'm hearing over and over again is training and development. And I think it's interesting, probably even for a lot of early stage founders or others on this call, that I think we all want our salespeople to be coin-operated machines, right? And that they're motivated by money. But I think all of us as sales leaders know that money's a factor. Sure, you want the ability to control your own destiny. But what I'm hearing kind of time and time again is from this panel and from others is that training and development's key. That this generation wants it and thrives that. And Marc, you can jump in too.
I was just going to jump in. I think those points are really great that everybody made, and I agree with all of them. The one thing I'll say about the training is it also has to be ongoing. A lot of times where people fall short or companies fall short is they bring in somebody to do some training and then they just rely on that sticking. We, as an example, brought in John Barrows to train our sales organization earlier in the year, and that was great. He did a great job, but what was more important was the ongoing training that we provided to continue to hit on the points that we learned there, and then from a one-on-one perspective, being able to, if you're truly going to have a coaching culture, you need to have real one-on-ones every week, and we've rolled out, like some others have mentioned, weekly lunch and learns and trainings as well. And I think it's not only really important, but it's the thing that's going to keep the younger generation of sales reps and SDRs engaged and wanting to continue to work within your organization.
Is anybody using any technology, like any type of 15.5 or any of these other kind of interactive technologies? One of the things that we found from talking to companies is this kind of next generation also wants this feedback loop, right? They want the ability to have their voice heard. So in your sales organizations, are any of you using tools to promote communication or thinking about that?
Yeah, I can jump in on this one. There's a couple things that we've been really liking lately. I mean, first of all is just good old-fashioned chatter. In Salesforce, we put a lot of communication, and all of our managers have one-on-one chatter groups with a director, and it's their direct report to the rep. And a lot of the coaching and feedback goes right in there, right? So it's tied to, and you can loop in, charts, metrics, dashboards, that sort of thing. We really like that. And we also use a tool called Skaled to kind of deploy training modules to our teams, and those are a little bit more question and test based. And so, as we kind of explore new markets and explore new just areas for us to sell, Sales is a nice way to get people kind of tightened up and buttoned up on the language we need to be using in terms of how we're pitching. So those are just a couple that we like.
All right. So I wish we could talk about the people side of it, because at the end of the day, your process is only as good as your people and your training and your onboarding and continual development process. But I think what a lot of people, when the feedback we got for this webinar wanted to really understand was also the changes in the sales process, right? That there's a lot of, talk around, the change in the buyer journey, that buyers are more educated than ever. And so I want to shift gears and spend a big bulk of the time now, talking specifically about this. And Marc, maybe we can start with you. What are, from a very high level, what are the changes that you're seeing in, like, let's call it the buyer journey and the way that buyers are preferring to interact with your sales team?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit on the biggest point before, which was prospects and buyers are becoming so much more sophisticated in their own research and more skeptical of salespeople. So it's important to be much more consultative in nature, and it really forces us as vendors to not only be able to talk about our product, but be able to provide value throughout the entire sales process. I think everybody on the phone here would agree that the prospect, before you speak to them, has almost always done a lot of research. They've conducted probably if not their own mini RFP, at least enough that they've made some really big assumptions about in us versus our competitors, and it means that our reps need to be a lot more prepared to maintain the credibility, whether they're using LinkedIn or their CRM or researching however they are. No prospect wants to talk to a rep who knows less than they do, and I think that is driving how important it is to have a sales strategy where you can set the tone and understand and make sure that you understand the buyer's challenges, plant the seed of your unique benefits that align to those challenges, and especially in the technology space, buyers in the technology space, they understand the sales cycle and they know what to expect, and they think they can run your sales process. So it's important to really understand their buying process, align your sales process to that process, and you also have to have the discipline to set the pace and the expectations up front to make sure that you can take control of the sales cycle and hold the buyers accountable for what they said about their process in the beginning, because it's more important now to be able to control that process.
And I would say, I mean, all four of us are really disruptors in our space, right? I mean, we don't hold the majority market share. There's the companies that have been around for 20 plus years in each of our spaces that control a lot of it. But what we're really starting to see in regards to technology is that there's just more options out there, and brand loyalty is really starting to fall apart. So the key to getting after this, like, sought after and repeat business, is to establish and maintain this human connection that we have with everybody. So that's part of the methodologies that we're trying to put in place here that, I mean, is really essential for any company here to show their customers that every specific call they have, every visit, every business meeting really matters, and to be important, just as Marc is saying, like, through the sale as well as establishing value even after the sale, obviously, as their customer.
All right. Anything else, Robby? Things that you're seeing, on the SDR front in terms of maybe how your prospects or people, as you're doing, tens of thousands of outreach points a week, I would guess, how have you seen, and we'll talk about the complete funnel here, but I think you're probably the right guy to start talking top of funnel. How have you seen the way that people want to be engaged, change as well too?
Yeah. Well, just to echo a couple of the points that Marc and Mike touched on, I think the first thing that's really important is you have to understand how your customers have engaged with collateral or marketing or really your company at all. I think it's pretty safe to assume at this point in time that most savvy buyers have engaged to some extent, and they're more educated than ever. And we try to reciprocate that, which is sales 101, where we want to be really be educated on the people that we're talking to, and so we make sure to use LinkedIn and really everything we can do beforehand to be really prepared for calls. And I think the other part of it is unless if you have an opportunity to get to a market where a lot of your buyers or your customers have not engaged with you, whether that's a new territory or a segment or something you're excited about, I think it's really important to get there as fast as you can and get in touch and contact as many people as possible. And that was one of the big initiatives we have here at Zenefits. I mean, we believe that our software and what we're doing is the best option for people to run the human resources part of their company for customers between 2 and 200 employees. And we were able to get to a lot of customers first by being aggressive. And a lot of it is just old-fashioned cold calling, mapping territories and prospecting. And cold calling really works for us. If we're confident in the pitches we're able to do, and right now we're doing a big territory mapping thing, which is fun. So you're able to really dive into these specific territories and find these little pockets where buyers maybe don't know about you yet, and that's really exciting. I think like when you are able to find those places, it's important to go as fast and as hard as that as you can.
I love that you think territory mapping is fun. Yeah, I think territories is an interesting, it's an interesting thing that, that I look forward to. Right now, we're the only player in our space, which is kind of nice. So we do have that let's go after everybody quickly kind of mentality. So I'd love to learn a little bit more about that. But sorry, I just had to comment on the territory mapping, which I don't find fun really at all.
I'm just telling myself that over and over again.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about maybe technology. As a part of, and let's start with kind of top of funnel here. What technologies are you either utilizing now or planning to utilize in 2016 to really amplify that top of funnel effort? So Robby, you mentioned LinkedIn, right, to make sure that you have a good understanding of the person's background, something to connect with. We talked about Salesforce. If we can just maybe go down the line, Mike, we'll start with you. The technologies that you're using for your SDR teams or your outbound sales and inbound sales teams to really make sure that they're as efficient as possible and spending time, with the right people as opposed to people, who aren't going to buy.
Yeah, I mean, the SDR team obviously run everything for us and are half the size of our sales team. But some of the unsung heroes are honestly marketing. They use Marketo, which is highly effective and brings in the marketing qualified leads before the SDRs take them and try to turn them into sales qualified leads. So Marketo through Salesforce is extremely important for us.
Got it, and I will. I'll echo the LinkedIn is obviously sort of paramount. We're sort of in the process of building our list and finding our targets, and like I said in the beginning, still defining our our perfect prospect. And so LinkedIn, along with SalesLoft, is the beginning stage for us and really the starting point for us.
All right, another email automation tool, so SalesLoft. What about you, Marc?
We're using the same things that they mentioned. We're using a number of other tools. We're evaluating a lot of our tools right now as we are trying to move a little bit away from automation and more towards personalization, which I can talk a little bit more about, but I'll wait on that maybe unless it's not really the topic of the conversation right now.
Well, yeah, unless Robby has anything else to add here. And just really quickly, Robby, I'd love to hear again some of the things that you're using. Dialers. I mean, I know Mike. I know the team at Grovo has dialers as well too. Or most of your sales team at least have using a dialer as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. We use a power dialer with local presence. So we find that like connect rates go up if you have a local presence on a power dialer. So yeah.
Yep. And I think which dialer are you using? I think it's Inside.
Yeah, so we use Inside Sales. They were kind of the foundation of Inside Sales, and like what Ken Krogh and his team did there was built on telesales technology, as he called it, which I think is what it was called in the 90s. And they have this like really robust program for kind of like building out integration into Salesforce, and it's a cool power dialer feature for us, and we really like it.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think again, it's pretty interesting. People, most all of you are echoing, kind of the non-death of the cold call, right? And that it's about personalization. And Marc, I think this is actually a really good segue to, what we talked about on the pre-call is cold calling is not dead, right? It's obviously a very active, fruitful way to generate leads. I think NetSuite, their head of SDR, she talked at one of the Sales Hacker events, and, they did an analysis on deals closed by appointment set type, between email and cold calls, and I think they found a 30% higher ARR when the deal was actually set, with a cold call. And I think, Mike, that goes to your point. It's that human connection. When that human connection is the first point, it does mean something, right? As opposed to just an email exchange. So let's talk now about, again, how buyers are responding differently. Again, kind of staying this theme of top of the funnel, Marc, and you're talking about your organization is moving away from what we would call more kind of like mass customization to something more tailored, whether that's social selling or not using more bulk outreach. So I'd love to hear a little bit about that, and then the rest of the panel. How have your outbound strategies either changed, or have you thought about them changing with this kind of need for further personalization?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about it. The challenge that I see in the industry, as you just mentioned, is that balance between automation and personalization. I've seen it firsthand, as you just mentioned, when we built out our SDR team 13 or 14 months ago. We decided to go with the quickest go-to-market strategy to get the most traction in the space, and it made sense. We used a high-volume automated email strategy, allowed SDRs to quickly prospect thousands of new contacts a week each, and reach out to multiple contacts at a company, which provided at each company, and that proved to be extremely fruitful for us, and for a long time it did. It allowed us to sign up most of the low-hanging fruit, but as we continue to grow in size and go more up market, we need to be more strategic and thoughtful in our approach, and that's what we're doing when we're reaching out to prospects that are happy with our competitors right now, or in verticals that are outside of our sweet spot. I really believe that this is across the board with everybody, really, that has become so good. Everyone's become so good at automating emails that buyers have grown tired of what they are now perceiving as spam. I mean, we all get those emails, and I barely open them now. So we've spent here at Greenhouse, we spent a great deal of time and energy over the last couple of months transitioning to more of what we're just calling an account-based selling model. So we're aligning sales and marketing and customer success to extract as much value as possible and maximize the revenue potential. So it starts with our SDR team, where we now are able to have tier 1 accounts in their segments that they spend a lot more time personalizing their messages. So their sequences, they still have sequences, but those sequences are much different and include a lot more calling, and when they are emailing, they're sending some much more valued added material, and we believe that this is going to drive many more opportunities in the areas that we want to focus on. And another side benefit as we go back to training is that I anticipate around the SDR career growth, automation is also a lot more impersonal, and taking a group of new to the business SDRs and introducing them to sales technology instead of pure sales methodology and selling skills can keep them in a place that maybe they're comfortable, but less likely to grow and improve on the other necessary skills that it takes to be successful in sales.
And this is Mike. We're teaming up with our marketing team even more now. One is to hopefully increase the brand, because as you increase the brand, they'll hopefully increase inbound, which I think we would all love to increase as much as we possibly can. But also I think we're seeing that online ad blocking software is becoming bigger and unfortunately better, so to speak, especially with small business owners. We see it. I think the number that I read was 93% of mobile ads are being blocked in Firefox and Chrome. So because of that, you really have to change what you're looking to do in 2016. So for us, I think a big part of it's going to be just educating prospective buyers, earning their trust, and hopefully solidifying our customer relationships to make sure that we can use them. Obviously, referrals are pretty powerful. So once you have that established network is doing that, since just going out and hoping that Google AdWords are a piece of it, but between all the PPC advertising and what have you, that we're trying to hopefully leverage our current relationships to make sure that we can build out some of the top of the funnel pieces in 2016.
Yeah, and I actually just want to chime in on what Marc was saying about moving from kind of a more volume approach to a more personalized approach. I think, I talk to a lot of sales development leaders, and there's sort of a movement for companies who haven't done anything in the way of email automation in that direction. A lot of people are thinking about it. A lot of people are thinking about what parts of the top of the funnel can we automate just to get some efficiency gains. And I think the big thing that we figured out quickly that we think is kind of a core tenet of ours is email automation and marketing and all that it all should facilitate conversations over the phone. And, it's not sort of like a method to get people, we don't really book demos just off like email responses, right? Like there has to be that discovery conversation, and you have to teach your SDR reps to qualify out, especially because you're going to get, depending on the volume you're doing, you're going to get a lot in. It's really important that they qualify out. And I think sometimes for a hungry outbound SDR rep, that can be a challenging thing to do, right? Qualify out a yes. But it's a really important learning lesson that we had here is using that tool as a way to facilitate conversations over the phone.
I like it. All right. So let's transition to post-qualification. So we have the meeting, and we've maybe done some discovery. We have a couple of questions here as well too. People talking about sales technology. So outside of Salesforce, there's a lot of technology we've seen at the top of the funnel. Whether it's helping with personalization, it's helping to make the SDR team more efficient. When you guys think about mid-funnel and later funnel, what are some of the other technologies that you're using? What about predictive tools? Are any of you using predictive tools to better forecast or to make sure your people are spending time? So I want to talk about kind of future trends and if 2015 was really the year of technology built for the the SDR, I think 2016 we're going to see more and more of these tools in the mid funnel and beyond. So I'd love to hear from the panel how you guys are thinking about these kind of past qualification technologies and what you're using, or at least planning on using.
I could start. We are right now in the process of evaluating predictive tools, but even outside of predictive tools, from the post-qualification perspective, we're using both Funnel Source as a tool for our reps and Insight Squared as a management tool to work and build reports around the opportunities. And these tools help the A's and their managers take ownership of their performance. And the usage of the tools that we're using will also evolve as we get more into it. We just started using Funnel Source, I think, a couple of months ago. Insight Square we've been using for about a year now. But as we get more used to it and more training and understand the best use cases, you can do a lot more with what you have. As far as the predictive ones, as I mentioned, we're evaluating a couple of them right now. And it's funny because the sales tech space, as you mentioned, is just so hot that we have this weekly influx of new tools, and so it's important to make sure the sales team is doing or whoever is sales ops in our case now, doing a thorough evaluation and utilizing the most impactful technologies and not over purchasing technologies and slowing down the process.
All right, Mike, Robby, Tice, you're in the initial process, Tice, maybe of doing this, right? And you talked in the very beginning about kind of your process, the ICP, sales process, technology. What are some of the things that you're most excited about? That you see might having a big opportunity to increase efficiency with the team once they're kind of up and ramped.
Right. I think a lot of it goes back to the last question where we're really trying to dial in the SDR process and sort of our beginning phases to really get that funnel filled. And then from there, there are all sorts of technologies around motivating the reps, and we do have rivalry in place, although we only have 2 reps at this point. So, some of that's a little hard, but, getting excited to implement some of these things. And, obviously Salesforce, I've got some cleanup there and some dashboards to build and some basics. So I think it's a little early for me on the predictive stuff.
Well, I'll chime in, and Mark, you and I better team up and get better discounts in the future because I'm going to give a shout out to Insight Squared as well. We just finished demoing them. We actually just inked a contract with them. Very cool stuff that you could see from them that Salesforce can't bring you. Mark, I'm telling you everything that you already know, but for the audience, there's certain pieces of history or just there's parts that Salesforce can't bring to you that Insight Square actually kind of tapes and maps and shows you. So it's a lot of what we're going to be using on our business operations and sales operations sides to do more predictive analysis of which reps are tending to do what in terms of how they do their forecasting, as well as which opportunities can close. So it's a piece of it is sales enablement tools as well. But pieces of it also take a look at, specific example, if an opportunity is in a stage for more than X number of days, what's the percentage of it closing? So you can actually be much more careful with your funnel and your pipeline. So if an example, if an opportunity is in a certain stage for 61 plus days and it has a less than 5% chance of closing, then I don't need the AE to necessarily go in and do it. We can just decide together that there's a very small chance that's going to happen. If they come back to us, great, but otherwise it'll help keep pipelines clean. So, so far, a little bit usage of it, but a big fan of that technology.
All right, so we have about 7 minutes left. So we're going to just do, maybe rapid fire here. Go Mike, Tice, Marc, and Robby. Top 2 trends that you want to make sure that you stay in front of in 2016 as you're building out your team. And then we've got a few questions here, so we'll have a little bit of time at the end for questions. Top 2 trends.
Yeah, number one, I would say is, it's becoming tougher and tougher to find really good people that are experienced, but we need to go out and do it. So the goal is to hold on to those who we do have. So employee satisfaction is a big piece, and we kind of talked about some pieces in the beginning of where that is. But there's other parts of the organization in terms of perks that you can also hopefully throw out to them. But we try to package it all up into one thing where the experience of coming to work is good. Because look, we're a startup, so long hours are just going to be a part of it. So the more enjoyable it is to actually be within these 4 walls, the better it's going to be. The second, I would say, it happens to be around value selling and connecting the dots between the problems that our customers or prospective customers have and then actually quantifying what those happen to be. So instead of going right to your solutions part of selling, is actually quantifying the problems that someone has and then making sure that our specific answer to what their problems are is going to be the best one from an ROI perspective as well as a user's perspective.
For me, I think it's going to be dialing in the hiring process, make sure that we've got the hiring process set up so we're doing the right things, asking the right questions, finding those right people. We're just at the stage right now, we just don't have time for the wrong people, so I got to make sure that I've got the right people, that I've vetted them properly, and that they can work together as a team, going back to sort of that culture point that I was making before. It's just really early and really important. And then I think my second piece, my second biggest focus is efficiencies. So how can we drive the most efficient process with those people that I find? Obviously, technology is going to play into that. Some of what we know historically about our current client base, things like that, learning from current clients. I think those are all things that are going to help sort of drive the efficiencies of the machine. Like I said, we're the first to market with this, so we need to, get at it and get at it fast, efficiently.
Okay. So for me, I've already talked about my biggest challenge and what I'm going to be focusing on, and that's the balance between the automation and the personalization. So I'll just think of a couple of other ones. One area that I'm going to be focusing on is just more attention to the handoff process between each group in the buying process. We're starting to really address this here at Greenhouse with segmentation, but to build a real relationship with the buyer, that sales process needs to be smooth and consistent, and giving that buyer a more holistic experience that flows comfortably through each handoff, whether it be from the SDR to the AE or the AE to customer support or customer success. I think is a really important thing, and that's something that we're focusing on. Another thing is leveraging sort of the newer roles that at least we have here in our organization, some that are supporting sales, like the sales trainer or sales ops. For instance, we've added a sales ops organization, something we didn't have. We have 3 folks on that team now. We didn't have anybody on that team before 2 months ago, and it's great figuring out where they can focus, and they're focusing right now on, among other things, simplification of Salesforce, more stringent qualifications for adding to our tech stack, as I mentioned before, and focusing on playbooks and stronger SLAs between SDRs and AEs and marketing and SDRs and things like that. And then the final thing, I think, is, as people brought up before, is just ensuring that all of the resources that we're putting in working and training and making the SDRs successful is making sure that we have a really good career ladder for them to be successful in our own organization.
Cool, and R2, I would say, the biggest one for us is dialing in more predictability in our outbound process, and I think that's like building on all the hiring and all the great talent we brought in the last year, and really figuring out kind of what that perfect appointment or meeting looks like and who that buyer is and how we can generate as many of those as possible and create more predictability for our entire sales organization from the top of the funnel. And I think there's a lot of ownership of that in our SDR org, and I think that's something we're proud, like a problem we want to solve. So yeah, predictability would be the first one. I think the second one is just kind of building on what one of the big themes here, which has been the continued education and development of our salespeople. I think for my org and SDRs in general, nobody wants to be an SDR for life. Most people don't want to be an SDR for a year. It's really important to show them how the time spent in this role is going to pay off in the next role. So continuing to build on that in 2016 is going to be big for us.
All right, awesome. So we're supposed to have 6 takeaways. We've got a few more, but I'll just do a quick recap for everyone. So one, finding really good people and retaining them, right? I think that there's a common theme that, whenever, I think all of you talked about this in some manner or another, and just really the importance of that, especially as you're growing. Mike, you talked about quantifying the problems, right? So not just understanding a solution to an issue, but how can you quantify it? Hiring process, right? Going into finding the right people, making sure that we actually bring them into the organization and set them up for success. Efficiency, making our team as efficient as possible. Marc, you had a few, automation and personalization. I think that's a really big theme. I think a lot of companies invested heavily in email automation tools and are now doing something similar to yourself. And Robby and I know Mike, you guys are thinking about it, moving toward this kind of perfect balance of volume and quality. And then Robby, one of the things you talked about that has been a common theme here is, again, kind of the continued education. So I think we had quite a few takeaways here. Again, people and process. I think there's a lot that's changing in 2016. A lot of it's similar, to issues that we've had for a long time. So I think we've got time for maybe a couple questions here. One question here, Robby, for you. Do you have tips for helping our email automation to facilitate a phone conversation? Meaning, really quickly, how do you think about using email to then facilitate a phone conversation? And we've got time for maybe 30 seconds, and then one other person can sign in for 30 seconds, and then we've got to wrap up.
Cool. Yeah, so I think about it 2 ways. I think, one, there's sort of more mass automation on the marketing front where you're not doing as much customer segmentation and figuring out who's the recipient. And I think on the sales side, if you have the ability to really drill down if you can isolate, a certain industry, a certain buyer, so that you can really target that message, I think that was where we found our sweet spot, where we could, pull data from Salesforce into these email templates that would really give us more of a targeted message that seemed and felt personalized. That was kind of our sweet spot. So figuring out, between the two, which direction you want to go.
We're a big fan of brevity, so brevity within the emails are good, and there's even some little tricks that we use within the subject. If it says alert, there's actually a 34% chance more that they're going to open up the email. So there's definitely some tricks like that, as well as Harvard Business Review does plenty of good statistics and things on don't give up, and most people give up after 3 calls, but you're going to get the majority of them after 9. So definitely keep up with it.
Stay persistent, yes. I remember looking at some of the Grovo numbers, and the team is nothing if not persistent, for sure. So, and just real quickly, so the 2 winners for the SaaStr giveaway are Ari Klein from Doxon and Colin Coggins. So if you want to tweet at Skaled, we can hook you up, and then if you want to email Amy at Sales Hackers. So big thank you to all of you today. I think we covered a lot of topics, but I hopefully for the audience we were able to get granular as well too, where people had some really solid takeaways. So thanks again, Sales Hacker. Thanks, Mike, Tice, Marc, and Robby, and have a great new year. Looking forward to 2016.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.
Love 2016.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. See you guys.